I'm a to the affordable housing plan, where they saw the gaps
Nobody get up and go anywhere.
Get started.
What's that?
No bathroom break.
Oh, there's not.
Perfect time.
It's good to see you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
I have the pleasure of calling the meeting to order since we will be taking care of beginning of the year housekeeping per board advisory guidelines. Wanted to reintroduce myself. My name is Demetria John. I'm the newer assistant town manager. I was here in had the opportunity to be here with you in December of last year. And, I've since been on board officially for almost 2 months now. I want to just let you know that we are we're currently being on live stream. So things that we talk about, the actions that you all take today, and that they're being seen today and after this meeting, they can see it on the town's YouTube channel. As far as the layout today, I have our town clerk, Mr. Alan Coleman here, who is going to be sharing in the agenda. But before we go that route, let me just, if I can, thank Shannon Cox for facilitating and leading the meetings. She was gladly willing to turn it over to me, and I really appreciate your leadership. And we still, look to you for some guidance. And Diane, thank you as well. The planning department has really been carrying the Housing Advisory Board. Just a little bit of update. We are still in the process of hiring a community development director, as well as building the remaining capacity for the community development department, which consists of 2 other positions, housing specialist and senior housing program manager. And that is ongoing. So thank you so much for your patience as we continue to build. I also lastly want to give recognition to our sole staff member of the Community Development Department, Mr. Michael Linsenmeyer, who has been with us for 5 months now. And Michael has been doing a really good job at especially helping me to get acclimated. And so thank you all so much. So I just wanted to mention that. As we go forward with the agenda, normally I know that you all will probably accept the agenda, but we are going to take care of the housekeeping items where Mr. Alan Coleman is going to lead in that aspect of it. And then once he does that, Michael is going to do his part on introducing the procedures for submitting a report on action items to the town council and the planning board.
We'll be going over the minutes.
Yes,
too.
and
Yeah.
we will be doing that as well. And then we will be turning it over to Mr. Aaron Sorrell, who is with us today. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Alan Coleman, and we'll go down the list. And I believe, Phil, you would take over with the minutes at that point, right?
That's right.
Okay.
All righty, well, good afternoon, everyone. For those of you that I've not had an opportunity to meet, please allow me to extend my warm welcome. My name is Alan Coleman, and I am the town clerk here. Part of the town clerk's department is supporting the boards and commissions. So that is why we are all here today, the Housing Advisory Board. We know this was a newly formed board. It hasn't been in existence for a long time, but it's certainly been an important and an active board. So I just wanted to extend my welcome and introduction from my side of the house. I also wanted to say on behalf of the mayor and council, just thank you. I know that sounds simple and it sounds, disingenuous, but it's not. It's a true, the council and the mayor, I know, appreciates the work that you do on this committee The best way that I know how to describe it is I know this committee has had starts and stops and pauses. And the way I like to describe that is I'm a musician, so I play the piano. I also play the trumpet. And so one of the things that we play when, we learn when we're learning new music is, we count the beats even in a rest. So even when we have a rest, we still count the beats because we know that that next note is coming. And so I would just offer that to each of you. I know that, there have been times where the committee may have been paused, but that doesn't mean the work is not important, and it doesn't mean the work is not still going to take place. So I would just offer that little music analogy there, and just ask that, be patient with us as staff. I know that we've got a new department that's leading the way, but I know that each of you bring a unique perspective, and the perspectives and the voices that you bring are valued. So just wanted to offer that as well. So thank you for allowing me that time. And now we'll move into the nominations and recommendations for chair and vice chair. This is a new process, a relatively new process that has been started. And a part of that comes to you all today in an effort of transparency, but also engagement. In the past, our ordinance requires that the mayor make an appointment to the chair and vice chair, and then council confirms it. But at no point during that process does the committee have a voice, or the committee have a way to weigh in on what their recommendations would be. And so that's a process that we started back in the fall with Planning Board, was our first. We've since went to Board of Adjustments. Parks and Rec will be coming up in the summer when they do their rollover in July. And so at this time, we will be accepting nominations for the position of chair, and then we'll also move into the position of vice chair. And just want to remind everyone, the ordinance hasn't changed. So this is truly just a recommendation to the mayor and to council, but we're hoping that this will be a new way that you all will engage and have input in who is leading your recording. So at this time, any questions?
Thank you. I'd like to make the nomination.
Okay.
If I could. I'd like to renominate our former, is that the right word? Our former chair. With that starts and stops, thank you for that. I think that that's an accurate taking a beat. I think the consistency is really important. So I'd love to have Phil, nominate Phil to serve again.
Any other nominations?
I'm gonna second Phil.
Okay. So we've got a nomination and a second. Any other nominations before we close nominations? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to recommend Mr. Phil Welch to return as the chair. Now we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Perfect. Now we'll move into the recommendations of the vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Beth Fussell, continue as vice chair.
Yes. Any other nominations? Okay, nominations closed on the said name. Do I have a second for that nomination?
I'll second that.
Okay, second. So we've got a nomination, a motion, and a second. Now we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have a chair and a vice chair. Thank you all.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, not to interrupt the plan.
I'm
Saw it.
first agenda item,
Yeah,
chair.
right.
Yeah.
We did something. So I have a question about the committee as a whole, right? So obviously chair and vice chair, but how does, I just don't remember because we have had stuff and stuff. I don't remember the process for adding new members or changing out members. And I'm only asking because I've been approached by others in the community about, hey, I would like to be a part of this, and I think they would be great members, but I don't know what that process is. So that is one of the questions is what does that process look like? Either expanding the advisory board or adding and subtracting. Not that I want to get rid of anybody, that's not my point here. But my point is just simply asking the questions about what is that process, so I can inform those folks.
Can I piggyback off of that and say, I'm wondering what the process is for rolling off?
Yeah, that's sort of my,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
And then I think I'm Mr. Roll off soon.
Okay. You were reappointed.
Oh, okay, we'll deal with that.
But-
With,
Good to know.
you were reappointed and Mayor Pro Tem was reappointed back in the fall.
Good to know. But yes, that.
Cool.
So I think to start out with your question, the position count was established as part of the ordinance and the resolution that the Housing Advisory Board functioned. Now, if additional seats need to be added, then of course that would require a change to the ordinance or a change to our, or I think it's referenced also in the UDO.
Okay.
So that would require a council action. So if that is something that is of interest of this group, then I would ask that you discuss it amongst yourselves, make a recommendation. We actually have, council has established kind of a rules committee that's reviewing kind of ordinance changes and policy changes that may impact different groups. And then they'll review that recommendation and then carry it back to council.
I wanted to say too, there was actually discussion on council when we talked about the boards on what is a good number. Because we were talking about it, if, a discussion ensues, if you have way too many people, then enough people are not going to get their input across. And the discussion just becomes unwieldy.
Mhm.
So when it's like this, it's more intimate, it's easier to get your point across, it's easier to have a discussion. So we were thinking this number is an appropriate number
Got it.
for this type of board.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's great feedback. And I'll also just say in terms of, interested folks, I would encourage them to apply. The application is open right now. So at any point in time, they can apply. When the application, this is the process we're working on actually in the clerk's office. When the application is received, of course, we'll confirm receipt. If there are no vacancies, then we'll communicate that to the interested party. Just so that they know, so they're not left out in the blue like what's happening. And then if there's an unexpected vacancy, for example, if someone is not meeting an attendance requirement, scheduling conflicts change, you're not able to commit to the meetings. That's what I mean by unexpected vacancy. Then we can reach out to those folks that have applied. Those that have terms that we know are coming up are on a regular rotation. And so if we know that someone is not interested in extending their term or being reappointed, we're going to do an active recruitment, so to speak. And so we'll advertise. You probably recently saw a Board of Adjustment vacancy that we advertised. We had two. So, we're doing that on social media and trying to get the word out there just so that folks understand, hey, we have vacancies, but at no point should anyone feel like they can apply if they're interested.
Okay, cool. Helpful. Thank you.
So
Alan, I'm sorry.
can I just read what the UDO says about
Sure.
the initial establishment of the Housing Advisory Board? It says at the initial establishment, 4 members shall be appointed for a term of 3 years and 3 members shall be appointed for a term of 2 years. I don't have the list, so I know who's,
Sure.
but the point is that all of us are continuing into 2023. It's at the end of this year that there may be vacancies.
Potential rotation.
Yeah, I think it's possible to be reappointed.
Sure. So that I think the intent behind staggering the terms that way was so that the entire board just roll off at the same time. Right. And so folks are put into different buckets of time, but they were still set to whatever the term limit. If it was, 3-year terms for a maximum of 5 terms, 3-year terms for a maximum of 2, whatever those term limits look like. But that was the kind of the intent behind why it was so many members were 3 years, so many members were 2 years, and so many members were 1. Does that help?
Yeah. So I would actually like to see that at the next meeting, if that's possible.
Sure.
Just so we don't sneak up on ourselves and not realize where we're headed.
In other words, who's defined by 2 years.
whose terms are when. and when
Okay.
they
When we're not
expire.
supposed to come back and we don't know, we keep coming back. We don't
We
have
can
no
keep going
idea.
on, They're like, hey, you're not part of this anymore.
Well, and that's great feedback.
Do
That's
our
great.
job.
That's one thing that we're trying to increase in the clerk's office is just making sure that folks understand. So they'll get an appointment letter and they'll understand what their terms are. We'll check in 6 months before their term ends, make sure that they're still interested in serving. We'll check in kind of on an annual basis to make sure that attendance and things are checking out the way it needs to be. But hopefully you'll be hearing from me quite often.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Very helpful.
Demetria, you had something.
I was just gonna say, was the applications, are they online and, did something go out to the public, to the community, or is this something that they have to take initiative to go on?
But if we have vacancies, then we'll do an active recruitment at that time.
Okay,
One thing that I think we thought about it for in the clerk's office is, council recently has had a booth at each of the festivals. And so that is a way for them to really engage with the public. And so something that I have inquired about going into this year's festival groupings, because there's quite a bit of them, is if we could have an iPad. And so as we're at our tent, if someone wants to engage, they want to be involved, we can then sign them up right there. It's a pretty simple application, but we're collecting that information. That's a way that we can do a recruitment, so to speak. But yeah, we're looking at also outreach efforts as well. Each of the advisory boards have a link on their page to apply. So if someone is interested, and we're starting up now where if there's a vacancy on that board or an upcoming vacancy, we can go ahead and put that on the page as well. Because most of the time, folks, they don't know to go to the clerk's office, right? They go to the Parks and Rec page, or they go to the housing page, and that's where they start to engage and really figure out, okay, how do I get involved with this? And so that's why we want to provide those links so it's easily accessible.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Alan. And thanks to all of you for your vote of confidence for that tonight. So we're going to move on to the meeting minutes that everyone should have received from December 9th. Does anyone have any questions, comments, vision? I looked them over and they looked okay to me. I'll move to approve. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just do a voice vote. Everyone to approve, please say aye. Aye. Everyone to oppose is. Hey, sounds like it's unanimous. Good, thank you. So now I'm going to turn over to, I guess, Demetria and Alan for the revision of the rules of procedure.
Alan.
Sure.
So, this is just a reminder. We know that these were established when the committee was initially formed. And so we just wanted to provide these as an update, but also, hey, here's a reminder of what the revised procedures look like. And so as we move forward in future meetings, if there are things that are procedural changes, then we'll be addressing those in this document here. So just wanted to take a moment because we're starting a new year off fresh and clean, and wanted to see if anyone had any questions about the rules of procedure or any feedback about the current rules of procedure.
So just to be clear, there's an update regarding when the meetings are going to be
Correct.
scheduled.
Yeah, thanks.
And then the process for creating special meetings in between and feeding.
Yes, so I wanted to also highlight that at the beginning of the year, there was a poll taken on the getting the meeting scheduled. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that there was a consensus on how the meetings will go for the rest of the year, other than it would be quarterly. But I think there should be some discussion among the board if the meetings are going to be quarterly, if it's going to be held on a certain date, and whether or not as long as there's a quorum, the meetings can go forward. If the meetings would rotate on that set day quarterly in the morning and then the next time in the afternoon, so that everybody can have the opportunity to attend that meeting. But I think that's a discussion that we'd like, to walk away from this meeting so that we could get it on the schedule for the rest of the year.
So do we want to do that now, or do we want to wait till later in the agenda?
Because the regular meetings in the rules of procedures is number one, I thought it's totally up to you, but we really need to take care of it here if we can. Is that okay?
This is usually the most challenging item on the agenda, unfortunately. So I'm
I just
wondering
wanted to
whether
put
we
it
should
out
wait
there.
till the end, because
Okay.
I don't want to take any more
Okay.
time away from Aaron. What are the rest of the board members think?
And I'll just suggest, so some other boards that meet monthly. They meet like on the fourth Wednesday or the third Tuesday. And so I think that's what, would be asked of this board is to going into this year, you set your quarterly meetings and they be, okay, the last month within that quarter, right? So we're saying January, February, March. So we're in March. And if it's the first Monday, 2/3 to 4/3, or first Tuesday, 2/3 to 6, that's what we're looking for, is to be able to have a set day, right?
So I understand that. I think that's a great idea. What we need from you, Alan, is what are the dates that are already taken? Because I think with the limitations on live streaming and recording and so forth, we need to pick a date that's not the same as like a planning board or whatever. So if there's some way to tell us, what are the dates that are available?
So the first Tuesdays wouldn't conflict. Because planning board is on the second Mondays, town council is on the second and fourth. So if everybody's agreeable to the first Tuesday, doesn't seem like it conflicts.
Okay, so then we'd be talking about the first Tuesday in June.
So the first Tuesday in June would be June 6th.
Right. And
You said what?
that's right. And so then, because this meeting is in the afternoon, I actually thought that we were going to be alternating between during the day and in the evening, but
That's
we can,
totally up to
yeah. I know Paul has expressed a preference not to meet in the evening, but correct. And I see Seth shaking his head as well. So, well, then maybe we can find a time in the morning. And I know.
As long as it's 3 months in advance, I'm okay.
Okay.
Like I can plan because my schedule books out that far. So, yeah.
So what about Tuesday, June 6th at, say, 9:30 to 11:30? Does that work?
I'm not gonna be here, but don't let that change. I mean,
Okay,
that's,
well,
I looked ahead and that's the only meeting of the year that would be a problem for me.
okay. Yeah, like Demetria said,
Yeah.
what we're looking for is a quorum.
Yeah.
So if we can
Correct.
get 4 of us here, we're gonna have to settle for that and hope that people don't get COVID in the meantime, like Bonnie did.
So
Are you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like Paul, unfortunately, I do have a meeting out of town that day. Potential that I could call in, but that's the only one that I think that first Tuesday would not work.
Will November be your day too, because it's election day, November 7th?
I think we're doing it on
the last.
it'd be December, it'd be the first Tuesday of December.
That's true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it would be September, so June, September, and then December.
Oh, you're right.
So I hear, Rhett and Paul both have conflicts on June 6th, is that right? So that takes 2 away from our 7, that means 5, that means only 1 other can
I,
drop out. That's,
I won't be here. I'm not a voting member, but I won't be here.
Yeah, but 11th, you're right. Jacob or Molly aren't here.
right, yeah, right. Is there anything other than the first Tuesday?
Well, I wonder if, it sounded like that was the only potential conflict.
Be
So-
Change that one meeting.
So if we have it, it sounded like the first Tuesday worked for everybody. I was looking
For
to,
September and
for
December?
September and December.
Okay, right.
Right,
Um,
well, the point I guess here is that the first Tuesday quarterly would be kind of what we set going forward. And so that's what we're looking for from this group, is that just be the standard. And
Right.
so that would be incorporated in the rules of procedure. This group meet quarterly on the first Tuesday. And if we want to say alternating AM and PM,
Right, I think it sounds like we could do that, except that first meeting, we would want to change. And I know that council does that. So maybe if we can set that first Tuesday alternating AM and PM. And then if we can find, like, that's the rules of procedure, but then we can find another date, maybe not now. For the June meeting.
Okay, we can do that.
Does that make sense? And I suspect June is gonna be a real challenge, so I would suggest a doodle poll from staff.
Yeah, sure. So the first Tuesday in September is the 5th. And the first
It's the 5th of September.
The Tuesday after Labor Day.
December
First,
the 5th.
Tuesday in December is also the 5th. So we're saying those dates, I mean, they look good on my calendar, so.
So that would be, just not gonna interrupt you, Phil.
Mhm.
That would be, so June, we'll look at an alternate. Likely the morning, is what I'm hearing. So
Right.
we're afternoon, that would be morning. September would be afternoon.
Correct.
And December would be morning.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Where we're going with 9:30 to 11:30 is the morning shift. Then the 2:30 to 4:30 is the afternoon shift.
Oh, I think we said evening, so.
So are we saying afternoon or evening?
There are a couple of board members that have a strong preference not to meet. I know,
Afternoon is good for me, so if that 2:30 to 4:30 range on Tuesdays is fine. That works.
can we do that? I think, Tina, your issue is public participation.
Right.
If it's all during the day, then it might preclude members of the public from
That's my concern.
participating. We are live streamed. That doesn't help that problem, but we're also recorded, right?
Correct.
So it's not quite the same as being able to come in person, but it is a backup. We've run into this problem before.
I mean, watching it recorded is no different than watching it live streamed. You can't,
Well,
you
that's
can't
right. You can't-
interact anymore live stream than you can record.
That's true. Okay. If that's okay, are you okay with that, Tina? No?
I'm not, but I'm not gonna hold up the process.
So could we ask maybe Michael to do a doodle poll for June, unless we can just slide, well, we can't slide to June, well, we could slide to June 13th because the council meets that day, but that's in the evening.
I think the best thing is a doodle poll.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Once we get later in June, to the school.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, okay. So can we ask Michael to do that?
How about with this, let's get the change to the meeting process, then I'll work on updating the rules of procedure to reflect, if that's okay, not to steal your thunder, Michael.
No, it's fine.
But I'll take that.
Okay.
You wanna handle this? Yeah. I'll take that. And so I'll send out a doodle poll for June. I'll also this evening send out the hold for the September date and the December date.
Thank you.
So that way everybody's got it on their calendar already. And then.
And I won't touch it.
and then-
Sorry.
Oh, you were the one who invited us all? Oh, I
That
was
was
like,
me, sorry.
anyway.
You were trying to fit your calendar in the weekend.
And then
We're waiting.
I'll also put some future dates, so going into 2024. So that way we just go ahead and have them already on the books. Because with this group meeting quarterly, it's gonna be important that we revisit the upcoming dates each time.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Alan.
Can I make
Thank you, my
a,
lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
can I make a bad request, but when you send us calendar invites, can you like fully name it like Apex Advisory, Housing Advisory? Cause I have like 98 different things on my calendar. Like sure, well, just help you guys. Agreed.
And I always think it's people that just spelled the HBA wrong.
I can see that.
So do we need a motion to
Yeah,
accept?
but
Make a motion that we accept.
I actually can we add something about a consent agenda?
you wanna add change the format of the agenda?
No, allow for a consent agenda. So that allows us to vote on multiple items at the very beginning of the meeting.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You wanna change up your agenda format so that you have a consent agenda section.
Yes.
Yeah, that we're allowed that.
Right.
So would that require a change to the rules and procedures?
That's so,
Well, it just says a proposed agenda. It doesn't say what it includes, so
Right.
we don't have to make any changes. We just have to.
Okay. Well, it's the staff that puts together the agenda typically, so if staff wants to do that, I would like to see it beforehand, obviously.
No, for voting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for voting, consent.
Just to knock out more items.
That's right, like these three first items, necessarily don't always have to. So anybody have anything? All right, all three approved.
Yeah, right.
And we just move a little
Yeah.
faster.
Yep. Okay.
Other than dates, were there any other revisions to the rules of procedure?
I'm not aware of any.
Not when I read through it, it seemed the same.
Okay.
except for that.
Okay, so only section 1 was changed.
1 and 2.
The process for calling.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you have a motion, I think, on the board from Audra. Do we have a second to the motion? Second. Okay, was that Seth? I was going the wrong way. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion needed at this point? If not, can we just go to the voting? So we just indicate by saying aye that we're approving that?
Aye.
Aye. Opposition? So that passes unanimously. Okay, so the next item. Okay, I think, Michael, you're going to talk about the new procedure for submitting the report on the action item to the town council and the planning board.
Yes, thank you, Phil. I promise to be brief here. In the meeting packet, you did get a template. Housing Advisory Board, report to Planning Board and Town Council. As I understand it, this is a document that is currently being used by the Planning Board for action items that go to Town Council and as a consistency measure. Going forward, all town boards and committees will be using this. It's a process to submit a written report to accompany recommended action items to the Planning Board and or Town Council. Coordinated through myself when the time comes. Just a few things that are important to note. Not all of the have items need to go to Planning Board before going to Town Council. However, when it comes to the incentive zoning policy, that recommended action item needs to go through the Planning Board because they are who recommends either approval or denial of rezoning cases to Town Council. So they need to be, they need to understand what the policy is on affordable housing.
So I guess that is the particular factor that would trigger something going to the planning board if it includes zoning consideration.
I would think so, yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to get clear. And when, just for my, edification, when it goes to the planning board, can the planning board change anything in there? Or what is the role of the planning board? Is the planning board going to forward it on to the town council? I'm just not clear how that process works.
Oh, you go ahead.
I'm gonna try, will you back me up or correct me? So the planning board would look at whatever the action item was and approve or deny, and then could make an additional recommendation around particular pieces or not. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and I think the only thing that will come forward would be the zoning incentive policy. And then if in the future you all have recommendations for changes to the unified development ordinance, you could pass those to the planning board to review, and they would make a recommendation and the council would consider. I
Okay,
think that's probably the only times that this one.
okay. And so at that point, it would go from the planning board to the town council. Would there be like a information item that would come back to the housing advisory board just to let us know what the change is?
Once the council
Approves it.
approves it, I'm sure you all would have an update on your agenda, but
Okay.
it wouldn't go
Okay.
between planning board and council, there would not be a step back.
Okay,
I have a recommendation, to add notes. I, in particular, like the reasons for extending votes, often a dissenting vote over on the planning board. So I'm very familiar with this section. I'm thinking notes would be nice just because in case there's a catch-all piece that would be helpful. And I will say as a non-voting member, if there were a piece that I felt like needed to be conveyed to planning board and council, that would be an appropriate place to put it. And I'm also thinking about the non-voting members on the planning board. I think that it might be nice to hear if there was some concern coming from the non-voting members of the planning board.
Yeah, and I will tell you, town council looks at that very closely. So we In fact, this was one of the things I asked for from all boards. If there's dissenting votes, we want to know the reason why
Yeah.
every time.
So Tina, are you suggesting there's a change needed to this particular form, or there's just an understanding of what can go in that section?
I think there needs to be an additional notes in case there is just, and I use that particular one as an example, but I'm just thinking about things that come out of planning board that we feel the need to convey to council. Diane always figures out a way to put it in there, but I think, just the general additional notes might be nice.
I think I could just say reasons for dissenting opinions, and that way it's not about your opinion.
That's a good idea.
And then for planning board, what we ended up doing, what you all will want to do, is we give you a separate form that you can type out or write out your own thoughts and don't
Attach it.
and attach it. Yeah. So we'll get you that.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So I think it probably takes the idea to make that in the form of a motion, and then we can vote on it and then dispose of this particular item.
You want to change the word?
Votes to opinions. So, and then with that change, vote to approve the report as presented.
And somehow indicate that there's a possibility that there will be attachment.
Well, it'll just be part of that package. It's the way we do it for
Okay.
planning board.
Okay. Okay.
How about this, and just say, be quiet, Demetria. What if we did a reasons for dissenting opinion, check the box, and then notes over here, because this is one page and we want to keep it one page.
We just write see attached in that section.
Okay.
Well, a lot of times we'll say see attached from Ms. Sherman and Mr. Welch
In the box
in
here.
the box.
Okay.
That's all that goes in the box. And then there's another form that I will get to Michael that you all will be sent, have it on your computers. We can print them out for the meetings and you write down what it is that your thoughts are when there's a vote, but because it's
Okay.
their opinion, just to say,
Just in
I
case.
didn't agree. Because sometimes
That's the motion. We have a second to the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, that's seconding. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Okay. You voted too, Val, right?
Yes, I did. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
all right.
Quietly.
That was very quiet. I was looking the other way. Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay, so that's that. And so we're up to, I believe, Aaron's part of the agenda.
Okay.
Aaron Dahl.
Well, good seeing everybody again. So after the meeting last time, the have voted to raise the income limitations to 120% for rental households and 150% for ownership households. After that, staff contacted me and felt that I probably overshot that a little too far and wanted me to take a deeper dive into whether or not we're incenting to too great of an extent. So I took a deep dive into the idea that besides wanting to provide housing for very low, moderate income individuals, one of the outcomes of the affordable housing plan is to also make sure that we are providing, or at least trying to provide housing for Apex workers. So these are the 2022 HUD income limits. A lot of the planning policy is written based on the 3-person household. I am looking at it more towards a 1-person household, particularly for rental and particularly for entry-level positions that you may be recruiting from in town. So this is the income limits. Down here is the monthly housing cost at each income limit, so that the 30% limit. So this is the maximum a 1-person household earning 60% should spend on housing without being cross-burdened. So this is kind of the basis for this analysis. The second thing that I looked at was, last month, I pulled all of the jobs that are were listed on the Apex, all of the exempt, the non-exempt jobs that I could find that were on Apex's HR web. The Wake County teachers' salary scales. And wanted to see, based on the entry level, where they fell in the AMI range, based on a one-person household. So the starting salary for a police officer is just under $59,000. That puts them at the AMI range for a single individual at 76%. The Wake County teachers, so this is the entry level with a bachelor's degree. This is an entry level with a master's degree. All of the Apex salaries, these are the salary range that were listed on the job description. And it was most of them just called it the hiring range. It isn't necessarily the maximum police officer will make, for example, but this is the recommended hiring range. The teachers' salaries, you are paid, there's a scale. 1 year is this, second year is this. So the max teacher scale or salary is based on 30 years of teaching experience. So this is the first year, and then this is the 30th year. You're starting in as a teacher at 57%. You're going to be at the end, they're going to move up, but roughly 85% AMI at the high end with a bachelor's.
93%, correct?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
yes.
bachelor, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it was a master's, 93%. The other thing to consider, so all of these, well, I shouldn't say all, but the vast majority are above the 60% threshold that was originally set in the policy for rental. The other thing to consider is overtime, especially police, fire, mechanics. There's just a natural overtime that come with the job. You're on a call, your shift ends, you're not going to end the call and go back. And so there is just overtime associated with that. So I looked at the minimum hourly rate or the minimum overtime hours per week that it would take for one of these jobs to exceed 80% AMI. And so police officer starting salary, they would basically get 1 overtime hour a week and they would be over the 80% threshold. A firefighter, 6 hours a week, a mechanic, 6 hours a week. For a firefighter, I think you run a traditional 24 on, 48 off. It does not take long to get overtime, just a cruise. I mean, that's just the nature of the job. The midpoint salary for a police officer, so say they've been here, 5, 6, 7 years, they're already in the hole. So they are already over the 80. So what I'm recommending is that for the rental, we lower it to 100% AMI from 120%. I think the staff is right that I overshot that. It's still at 100% AMI. None of our first responders, teachers, almost none of them should exceed that threshold at the rental housing level. And why that's important is because with the policy is if somebody has a unit and they exceed that threshold, that unit no longer counts towards the credit that the developer has agreed to. Any questions on this?
Would you mind going to the first slide?
Yeah.
So you're saying the one person limit for 100% AMI is around $2,000 is what's still affordable,
Oops.
right?
Yes.
1926. So we talked about this a little bit last time. What is the average rent in Apex?
Yeah, so the average rent based on what staff had sent me was around $1,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So you're going to exceed that or you're just under it or over it. So really this is kind of the sweet spot between that 80 and 100%.
But that won't change. That won't change, right? Like there's no middle between 80 and 100. It's 80 or 100.
I mean, you can calculate 85, 90, but typically all of the.
But affordable housing doesn't do it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah, they pretty
It is the
much
limit
follow-
and they max it.
Correct. They pretty much follow these 20%
That's right.
tiers.
So, yeah.
And just one thing, a point of information is that when HUD defines the affordability of a housing unit, it's not just the rent, it's also utilities. And that can tack on easily $200 to $300 a month. So you have to kind of take that into account as
So it
well.
doesn't tack on, it takes away and it's a set formula.
Right.
Right, so it'd be like, for the 100%, it'd be like $1,800, the rental limit plus utility allowance of 126. It's a set formula, it's not based on what they actually pay.
But the total of the rent and utilities has to be less than 30%.
Has to be less than whatever that number is.
That's right.
Okay.
For them not to be cost per rent. Yeah. Now, when there is a utility allowance when calculating like high home rents or low home rents or Section 8, et cetera.
Not just the vouchers. There's utility allowance for all of it.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not just with vouchers.
Right. And then on the home ownership level, so we had suggested I had suggested at the time 150%. I looked at it again. So based on the median home value and the 3% down, that equates to roughly $2,600 a month as far as at a 30-year fix. So it bounces around between one person and three person and on at 4 between 100% AMI and 120% AMI to ensure you're not being cost burdened. This doesn't include HOA fees or that kind of thing, which will add to this.
What mortgage interest rate did you use on your calculations?
Right now, 6.5.
What, I mean, but that's 2020, right?
Yeah, it's going to go up.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, it has gone up.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, so what, like,
This was the easy number to find. It has gone up.
but that's a significant growth in those 2.5 years, 3
Yeah,
years, whatever you want to call it. So I'm curious.
That's very true.
I think,
I wonder if there's any way we can get more current home values, because Seth's right, home values have gone crazy in the past 2.5 years. I mean,
6 months,
yeah,
2.5, 6 months.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They've just
I
gone
think,
up
I
and up.
At
think,
least last year's.
I mean, I would say well over $400,000.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're way over that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, then, I mean, I have less heartburn about keeping the home ownership limit at 150% than I do the rental at 120. The other change that I recommend is on the compliance period. I think on the rental side, instead of having it fixed at a minimum term of 20 years to be considered, that should be negotiable by staff and then ultimately approved by council. But the term should be based on income targeting. So if they are targeting, say at the 80 to 100% AMI, there needs to be a longer affordability term versus if they're a deep income targeting at 30, 50, that's really going to eat into the operating pro forma. So maybe a shorter term is a little bit appropriate. And we would develop an internal matrix as we work through these projects to see that as they evolve to where planning commission and council are comfortable so that we can give the development community some guidance. Like I said, I had originally come up with a fairly detailed formula, but after thinking about it from staff's perspective, because I share 2 hats on the private side and I'm also on the planning director for Huber Heights. I was afraid that boxed staff in too much and precluded some negotiations. So I do think that it makes sense that the rental compliance period be negotiable based on the income targeting that project is going. Home ownership, I think stays. I think 20 years is appropriate. Ideally, it's perpetual affordability under the land trust model. That takes kind of a special family who is interested and willing to sign on for what that means. But between the habitat model, the land trust model, I think there's 20 at least 20 years is reasonable from my view.
Well, and ideally too, we would want someone to be able to build generational wealth. I mean, that's the whole goal of this, right? So at the end of that 20 years, if they want to sell, that's part of building that wealth. So keeping it perpetually at that lower income is probably not the target that we want to go for.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of the balancing act, right? So the land trust model ensures long-term affordability. What it doesn't allow is deep wealth accumulation based on that asset. There typically is some accumulation, but nothing like just the straight market, especially in a market like Apex, which is seeing price acceleration above the national average.
So we're currently, there's a range that I'm seeing for housing prices, but basically mid-4s is kind of where we're at this point. So.
And to her point, I mean, when you own a home, you take on all the expenses of owning a home.
Yep.
And, part of that trade-off is, that you're gonna, when you do sell, you're gonna get the gain of the value of that property. And if you're holding that down, you're really making it like you get the economic value of renting with all the expenses of owning. And I'm not sure that that's terribly appealing.
Right.
Yep.
I would agree.
Well, and so that's why I'm not recommending any change to the term under the home ownership book. But ideally for long-term affordability, only if the land trust model plays out. And that's probably a discussion, again, kind of a negotiation between the builder or the developer. If they are providing, let's say they're going to turn the model home over and sell it at an affordable rate, that's probably a different discussion than if they're going to give 5 vacant lots to the CLT or Habitat.
Right.
What does the home ownership model look like 20 years if they want to sell at 10?
Is it equity sharing normally?
Yeah, there's usually a recapture, or I think we have a resale provision.
So they can sell for market rate, but it's shared between the town and the owner, depending on what year they sell.
Yeah, usually that's the case. Yep.
Yeah, that's the way Raleigh does it.
Yep. So and that subsidy is the difference between the appraised value versus what it's actually selling for, and it's that delta that's shared at the time of its.
The problem is that no one is able to track that. That's the problem at the staff level, right? Because there's no way that the staff can track that. I mean,
It's very difficult.
From the Raleigh side, I could speak to the homes itself.
To track when it's sold.
Yeah, and basically it goes unnoticed unless the next home buyer happens to get it caught in their title search, whatever. That's the only way it's been caught. And in Raleigh, I could give you an example that it goes unnoticed. And so there is no protectability of it until at some point somebody figures it out.
Oh.
And at that point, it's lost, right? Because you're not going to go back and get it from the previous homeowner. They're not going to give it to you.
When we did it in Dayton, we would have a patient third mortgage or fourth, depending on the capital stack, as well as a deed restriction, in the hopes that at least one of those two would get caught by the title abstractor.
So I wonder, and I have no idea, so I'm throwing this out there, because Apex has our own utilities, I wonder if there's an easier way to track it in the town of Apex where it wouldn't be easy in other situations. So if there's a cell and there's a disconnection of water, well, that's how you can catch that immediately.
Like that in the
There's some
utility.
legal issues with us.
See-
We're not allowed to look at the utility.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure for housing if there's an exception, but for planning issues, we're not allowed to look at utility.
It will probably be that way for housing.
That's my
Yeah,
guess.
definitely.
Yeah, it's a privacy issue.
Yes.
Yeah, I think when we get to the administration manual, for that very reason is the recommendation would be the two-prong approach, a patient mortgage, and then also a deed restriction again. So hopefully that's caught by by the abstractor who pays attention to it. Now, if it's a family transfer and they're not doing, you know, a traditional closing, it will probably go unnoticed, but those are pretty rare. Out of 20, that might occur once.
And so, I mean, we've used this model too, but we're a small private company.
Right.
Like it's literally right across the street from headquarters. So I'll see the first sale thing. And I was just curious because, you know, and who recaptures that money? Does it go to the private developer or Apex City?
It would go to Apex to start fund, again, helping replenish that housing development fund that you have.
All right, so just clarification here. So for home ownership, you're basically okay with either 120 based on the new numbers,
Yes,
but you're recommending to drop it to 100 for rental.
that's correct. With a negotiable term, and not the minimum threshold of 20 years that the current policy states.
And the rental numbers you gave, was that from 2020 or 21? The $1,500 a month.
That was based on a 22 analysis. September of 22. Okay, so that's pretty
The
current.
rental, that's rental.
I did look at the FMRs.
They don't come out till.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the last meeting, we discussed this pretty extensively, and just looking back at the minutes to remind myself some of this, but we talked about having kind of a tiered structure and different elements of that. And are we kind of pulling that back in now, or?
No. So this rate is really about the tiered structure. This negotiable term is really about the tiered structure at say 80%, the minimum term should be, I'm making this up, 10 years or 15 years. At 100% AMI, it should be 20 years. At 60%, it probably needs a 60% AMI project is probably going to be co-developed with tax credits. So that'll align with the 15-year initial compliance period. So I mean, we need to layer those.
And as I also remember, the incentive zoning policy is not the only tool in the toolbox for affordability.
Right.
And as I remember that we were discussing it, the other elements of Apex's affordable housing plan are really focused more on the lower income citizens. And that the incentive zoning was a little bit more focused on what's often referred to as the missing middle. It's the people that make too much money to be qualified for the lower income, but don't really make enough money to do much with it.
Yeah, I don't know that we really cited missing middle and.
Well, I think that was
and
kind of
the
the
affordable housing.
concept, though. It was people that were, and I think the example he gave was who he was just showing, firemen and policemen and teachers and so forth. But the people who are in that zone of you make too much money to be considered low income, but you don't make enough money to really afford to live either. And I kind of thought that was the focus of the incentive zoning part of Apex's overall housing policy.
Well, he did,
Right,
look at
right.
the salaries.
I understand that.
Those, yeah.
I mean, those are very specific towards Apex employees. There's obviously all kinds of job opportunities out there that are varying.
Yeah, yeah.
But all that is to say is I was comfortable with the decision we made last time, kind of based on that premise, but
I think we're seeing some new data here, and I would actually like to go back to the home ownership discussion and understand a little bit better what difference it would make if that 348 was lifted to or increased to 400 or 450 or whatever. So what would that I don't know whether you can do that quickly, but
Yeah, keep talking.
I will say, I was pleased to get the message about the change, because I feel like that, again, you're referring to the we may not have called it the middle, but I feel like this change more accurately reflects what the realities are. And I feel like this was like you said, we had a pretty extensive conversation. But we didn't have all of the data to sort of back it up. But I feel like the data backs up what at least some of the concerns I had were around missing folks in the community. And while absolutely folks are coming from different areas, not just the town workforce, I think the town is pretty generous in our benefits. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the council, I think our town is pretty generous in compensation, and I feel like this captures workforce there. Workforce, thank you for bringing the teacher salary there. Yeah, I feel like this just more accurately reflects where we are.
Well, and I think too, like we were working with hypotheticals, whereas this, we now have actual numbers to work with. So I think I'm comfortable going to the new numbers based on the data being provided.
But it's still, to Paul's point, is not that we're getting rid of the layering. Because I don't think that's a
No.
I just want to make that very clear, right? That we still support, or at least tiering. I'm not speaking for Paul, but based on his mentioning of it, that was the discussion we had last time, which was the tiering matters in whatever the number happens to be. So, yeah.
And that would be operationalized by the staff.
Correct.
As long as the staff understands what the levers are that they can pull.
So, based on the internet, 3% down, a $400,000 house at 6.6%, including real estate taxes, what they're assuming here is $3,300 a month. That's a 30-year fixed term. And that puts you right here. And that assumes good credit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that puts you in between the 120 and the 150, depending on the number of people in the household.
Well, because I don't think housing prices are gonna go down anytime soon. Certainly not in Apex, North Carolina. Maybe we ought to leave the home ownership number where it is and adjust the rental side.
That I'm comfortable with that after doing a deep dive in the data.
The only thing that I'm concerned about is that we're looking at, unfortunately, apples and oranges here in my view, because what you were just talking about is the housing price side. What you were talking about before is the salary side and the income side. And I think you have to kind of look at both together. And I'm concerned that if we just take the 150, the town is not going to be able to push the salaries up as quickly as the home prices are going to be going up. And so that's what makes me uncomfortable.
That's where the rental comes in, right? Home ownership's not for everybody.
Cool.
Yes, but you're not trying to push everyone in the town employees into the rental market, I don't think. One of the vision of the affordable housing plan was to have a diverse population. And it's not just a diverse population where the high income is in the homes, in the houses, let's say, and the lower income are in the rental units. I mean, that's Habitat is putting lower income households in the homes.
But it's up to 150%, right?
Right, there's a range.
Yeah, it's just the
150
range.
is the upper range.
Yeah,
It's
still
not, this is the only thing we're.
It's not the
providing.
cap. So.
Yeah.
I think that's where the incentive of the layers comes back,
Yes.
right? Which is why I wanted to rehash that. Or
Right.
It's like, hey, yeah, at 150,
You don't get nothing.
your incentive may be really small, right?
Right.
From
But
a staff
at
perspective.
80,
Sorry to interrupt. From
No,
a
go ahead.
staff perspective, that's not where we're going to start.
Right.
That's just the ceiling.
Right.
Yeah. So I think our responsibility as a board is to then take the staff perspective of whatever those incentives are, as Michael stated, and say, okay, is this enough for us to encourage folks to go at 80%? Now, whether or not they physically can do it in their development, that's a whole nother story. That's off the table, but for this person, but there are ways to do it. And again, I'm going to advocate, obviously, because I'm a part of the land trust and I recognize the limitations that you both brought up. However, it is also important to recognize that the market is controlling that. And so you can't have it both ways, where you put somebody in a home and then maximize their return. Because once you do that, you get into, well, we don't have any houses anymore, and you're back to where you started. So I just wanted to advocate that, yes, I mean, there is a limit and there is a balance that you have to achieve. But keep in mind, the market is what is controlling that. And so folks that currently would be renters as your, town staff, salaries that are up there, they have no ability to be a part of the market. And so, even a 2% return over 20 years to every year for 20 years is better than the return they're getting now, which is 0 and nothing going to their long term. So I wanted to just put that out there because
Yep.
the comments that were, put forth, which are a valid comment, but in the world of housing, you have to understand the balance that's there. And if you want to maintain the affordability, or if you want that affordability to expire and provide one home owner the opportunity to make $200,000, or if you want to provide 4 homeowners the opportunity to make $50,000. I think that's the point I wanted to get out. So,
I think on the homeownership side, you're also dealing typically with less units for a developer to be able to.
That's right.
To absorb those costs across the development, unless it's a large tract development. But on the apartment side, typically, 50, 80, 100 units minimum.
So have we ever established, we needed to figure out what was the cost savings for some of these incentives? Right, I think that's important. We're gonna layer incentives.
So I think that's difficult to quantify. Generally quantify because the topography of the site, the cost of utilities, all of it, every site is unique, as you know. So if it is a challenging site from a topography standpoint, an RCA reduction may be more valuable than a height increase bonus. And I think that's where staff working with the developer to figure out what is the magic matrix there makes the most sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say for that type of thing, just like when we're talking environmental incentives and things like that, we really do depend on our staff to do those kind of behind the scenes negotiations of what's gonna make sense in this project, in this development. So, in all of these, we want as many options as we can get for these incentives for them to pick and choose and work with each and every development to see what works.
And I think the only thing I want to add to that is giving staff the flexibility. I think as staff comes before planning board and council, it's going to be important to go through the how the layers are working, not only for the board, but also for the public. You're good. Not only for the boards, but also for the public. And I've heard some conversations around some of the environmental advisory board's recommendations versus, what is practical in a development, right? And so I think bringing those conversations to light and that be a part of the staff recommendations coming forward, I think is going to be really critical to just help further the conversation and people's understandings.
Yeah. Ohio, I could easily quantify that because we're just doing cornfields. Yeah. And those are easy to figure out.
Well, and I know it's gonna be a range, but if we're saying incentive, right, if we're talking financial incentive.
Right.
They need to know what that is, right? And I know developers are smart and, they have people on staff, but we want to make it quick and say, here's the range of what this could save you, and then maybe you can put that back into some affordable housing. I think that's an important piece to it.
And I think from a developer perspective, they're going to come to the initial discussion already having penciled out what they think they need or what they would like. So they have a sense of the site, topography, cost of infrastructure, and and they're going to go to Michael or whomever and say, we would like to add these additional affordable units. this is what we need to make it happen. And then the dance and the negotiation occurs. That's where it begins.
I get what you're saying because it would also be nice for us to say, this is what we've done calculated and this is what we'd like to see you do. As opposed to them saying,
That's it, yeah.
telling us what they want us to do. And that's where we need to get to.
Right, because they're gonna do what you were just saying, they're gonna test
Yeah.
the ground and see, this is
That's right.
really, I can get this incentive, I'm gonna save $500,000,
Right.
but I'm only gonna give them $100,000.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what kind of gives us that balance. But also, I'm big for transparency, right? Like, let's put everything out there.
Right.
So they don't have to hire some high-end engineer to figure this out at a high level, right? Not to the details, and so they can see, like, oh, this might be worth my time.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
You know, that's a good point. The easier you can make it for them, the less they have to spend on that high dollar engineer. Because the more they have to spend on that high dollar engineer, that cuts into their bottom line and impacts their ability to do it anyway.
That's right.
Right.
And then they realize it's not worth it, and they still have to pay the engineer.
Yeah.
And so now they're not gonna come back to it next year.
And encourage them to do some
Yeah.
value engineering
Yeah.
as opposed to.
So do we need to then talk about, do we want to vote on this again?
That's what I was just
So
gonna
it's
say.
better?
I think we're at the point where, we can entertain a motion. I mean, I would like to entertain a motion to go with the rental side anyway to the 100% from 120. That seems like it's reasonable. A good place to start. Does anyone? I think I'm allowed to make a motion. I'm not sure. So I'm going to make that motion and see if there's a second.
So we just clarify what we're saying. We're saying the maximum incentive that we can offer a developer, they can't develop anything above 100% AMI to be considered affordable or rental.
Make to
Receive any sort of incentive.
correct.
And then they layer it in your max at any point.
Yeah. Right. And in the max every year, the city is recertifying the income of those households. And it also provides, because that, let's say the term is, make it up, 15 years, right? They have to have so many units affordable for that 15-year term, which means that, if somebody exceeds that income over 100%, the next renter that they are going to go after needs to be at below that. Because otherwise, they're only going to do it once, to your point, right?
The challenge is, and I see where your brain's going, it's the same as mine, that's really hard to meet, right? Especially once somebody's in, the likelihood of them moving out and freeing up a space because they have something that's affordable, especially in APEC, I would imagine is close to zero, right? And so the salary, if their salary goes up, which I think we all agree we want to occur, right? To build wealth and equity, regardless if it's rent or not, then that makes it really challenging because they're probably not going to move out. And if they do, then the next person that comes in would have to, meet this criteria, but you're never going to catch up, I think, is my question.
Well, so I think it de-incentivizes the person moving in to make a better life for themselves. Right?
Yeah, no. So think about, you're familiar with the home program, right?
Yeah.
Think of it as floating units. You're not designating apartment 102B as the affordable unit. At the annual research, they have to have, 5, 10, whatever units that are affordable. And as those people move in who meet that criteria, as they stay there, they count towards that meeting that objective. But at year 6, that person hopefully has increased their income. The next unit that comes online, or the next 2, because there's always turn, one of those needs to be rented to an affordable individual.
So my question is, right, let's just say $100,000 is my income limit. And so I get the below market rent. I now make $101,000. So I no longer qualify, or I no longer qualify in terms of this incentivization. Do I now have to pay the market rate rent? Right, so now the landlord or the developer now has 16 units. that are below market rate unless I make that person jump up in price to meet the market rate. Does that make sense?
Or maybe the next unit that comes online for rent, they, use a different calculation for how they charge.
That's
the
how that would
rents.
typically
Yeah.
go, because you're gonna be you're in a lease and typically the lease says it's gonna, your rent is gonna go up however many percent. I doubt a landlord would increase the rents from subsidized all the way to market because that individual will want to move back.
That's right. But now they have 16 units instead of 15 units. They're collecting below market rate rent. Right?
Eventually.
See, it's compensated.
Yeah, but if they only dedicated, say, 5% of their total portfolio in that building, and it's a 100-unit building or a 100-unit complex, all right, so they have 5 out, now they have 6 out of 100 instead of 5. It's not going to squeeze them that much.
So, a curiosity, but is the town prepared to, preparing the infrastructure to measure all of this? Because obviously this is gonna take a lot of people or whatever systems, right, to measure this.
Michael can do it by himself.
That's part of that infrastructure that we have to put in place under the Community Development Department. Also for tracking, what we were talking about earlier about, monitoring, you were talking about.
Turnover.
Yes,
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 turnover.
yes. And so that's part of that infrastructure that we have to put in place for that.
It's not hard initially, but as you develop that portfolio.
Right, you can
it
see
gets
how this
more-
can become really complex.
Yeah.
19 years down the line.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
When you
pretty
can't just look out the door.
Right.
And remember, a lot of times, people will get low-income housing tax credits recertifications mixed up with, this type of development because, in those developments, there's a recertification process for 2 years, every 2 years. And, they can't make more than what they're supposed to. But after that 2 years, they're not recertified.
But this is also a good problem to
Yeah.
have. I mean, if you are to the point of where staff is having a hard time keeping up,
Yeah.
you put a lot of portable units on the,
Yeah.
on the market, so.
So, we're approaching 4:00. And I put a motion on the table. Maybe it wasn't clear enough, but the idea was to take 120% of AMI for the rental units and lower that to 100% AMI for the rental units. So, because there are other things I want to discuss here, so can we at least, can I get a second so we can vote on that, or did someone want to? If I don't get a second, then I can't vote.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Do we understand what we're voting? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye. Vote in favor, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you voted as well? Okay, and all those opposed? Okay. All right, so that takes care of the rental side. Then we go on to the home ownership side. I'm wondering whether we can compromise on that and go halfway in between the 120 and the 150. That would make me a lot happier. Is there any reason why we couldn't do that?
My only concern, and I know we've been on this for months and months and months, is as we look at other municipalities and the incentives, they're not getting numbers, right? Most of them are just not producing numbers they want. And it's because they kind of brush through the process and
Right.
look at well, this means this to a developer, this means this to a homeowner. And I'm happy to approve it, but are we approving it just to put it on paper? You know what I mean? And that's
That's a good question. Well, Aaron presented, the other towns in the area the last time we met back in December. I don't remember those numbers. I do remember there wasn't a great take from some of those other towns. But I don't know whether they were using something even close to 135% for the home ownership side. Do you
And
remember?
also, this is a starting point. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think we have consistently said we're making the best educated decision we can. And so we might miss the mark this time, but coming back, in throwing that dart, we're going to come back. And if it's not right, we're going to reevaluate.
I don't feel like the data that we've got now is compelling enough to change the decision we made last time versus on the ownership side versus what we just talked about on the rental side. And I can tell you that if we want developers and builders of new homes to find the incentives adequately incentivizing, we don't want to set that bar so low on the AMI side that the incentives aren't going to get us there. And so I think I'm going to recommend that we just stay where we are, the 150 on home ownership, and see how it plays out. Maybe we turn the program to the bigger success than any of our peer cities.
I would respectfully disagree. I think Apex is a thriving community that has a lot of growth, even more growth coming this way. And so I think starting a little lower or where we're recommended, I think is probably the right point. And then it's going to be harder to go in the other direction. Not that I want to be clear, not that I don't share your concern. I just think that there's a craving for this. From developers, again, sitting on the planning board, they're coming and they're asking, what can we do? How can we make this happen? I think putting something out there, and if they don't bite, we come back and revisit this next year.
So where would we want to be wrong is my question. We want to be wrong putting too many units on the ground or not enough units on the ground. Right? So if we do 150 and developers like, oh, this is awesome, let's all build, right? Like, all right, let's slow this down next year. Like, let's bring it back a little bit. That might not be a bad problem either.
I think we're going to have a hard time going in the other direction. I think this is like, right now we're in the middle of inflation. We're not seeing prices come back down. We're not going to get that to reverse. And so I think slowly offering and starting a little lower, starting at the floor instead of at the ceiling is probably where we want to go. But that is just an opinion.
I don't disagree with you, Tina, actually. I think starting lower, it's easier to go up than it is to go down, right? And it is our first shot, so, we may not have any takers, and the difference between 135 and 150 is not huge. I mean, there is a difference, right? But, I even think at 150, we're gonna struggle to get people in those homes and keep them affordable, right? That's just my opinion. So I think the lower we can start, maybe that gives the incentive. And again, keep in mind, there's a tiered structure too. So, we're not talking about the 150 getting everything known to person A, right? I mean, I think that's the difference, right? And it might lend itself, a lower number might lend itself to more partnerships to bring people to the table that currently aren't at the table. And I'll use Seth and I as examples. There might be opportunities for builders to come to the table and say, all right, we can make this happen, but we need a partner on this, and that partner needs to be X, Y, Z. I think, in my opinion, that's what we need to be doing. And so that incentive at a lower number, I think, makes sense to me. So that's just my thought.
So my thought too is whatever number we end up deciding today, that we need to revisit this in 1 year.
Yes.
And what we need is the number of units that have been approved based on this incentive policy in that last year. So staff can track that for us. That way we know that number and we can come and revisit and say, hey, you know what? We've only gotten a handful of units. We want to go higher here. Or this is working. We've got plenty of units that are coming on board and nobody's slowing down on it.
And feedback. I mean, I'm, getting that feedback. I think, if we're hearing from developers and they're saying, look, if this were just, if this were just a little less or a little more, they're not going to say a little more, but if this number doesn't quite hit it, but gosh, if it were just this, and getting that feedback, I think staff will get that feedback. I think we'll get that feedback at planning board. I think that's going to be really critical, along with just the numbers, the feedback will be really critical.
It also allows you to then fine tune the program.
And I'm going to say to staff, I mean, honestly, if we end up having like, oh, we've got sort of these perfect developments that are coming and they're just saying that this number is just not hitting that mark, well, then let's revisit it prior to the year. Right. If we have such a swarm, again, it's all a negotiation. Developers can come and go, we've got this and we can do this, we can do this, but we just can't hit this mark. If we start seeing a lot of that, staff, bring it to the board and let's change the policy.
I hear what you guys saying, and let's say we approve it right now. When is it ready to hit the ground for developer, right? So we're saying a year, right? We're gonna revisit it, but is it gonna be ready to go tomorrow? Or is it gonna be ready to go in September?
I guess it depends on how quickly we get through the rest of the stuff.
So the plan is whatever we decide today, I'm gonna go back, fine tune the policy, working with Michael, and Demetria, and then have this thing ready to go to final approval by you for the next meeting, and then on to council or plan board or however, planning commission, however.
Yeah,
that process.
So that'll be like 5 months out, 4 or 5 months out.
Or if you tell me differently, we can move faster, but I mean, you're only meeting quarterly, so that,
Well, we've had special meetings with that.
okay, then maybe that's the opportunity.
What's the approval, well, what's the process gonna look like to get this information to the hands of developers? To publicize, to make it well known that this is available to them? I think that's an important.
You still have, you know, once it goes to approval, you know, staff does need time, you know, to, you know, get this developed out and published out. I mean, we're still building this department. We're not trying to stop the train, but we don't want to set staff up for failure either. And we need to get a clean, a good quality product out there. And so we'd like that opportunity to, by the next meeting, make the recommendation to you all, clean up the document. Once it's approved, then we can take it to, you know, planning board for recommendation in the council. And we'll try to keep on schedule to keep that moving.
My guess is, as developers come in and start talking to staff about potential projects, you're having those conversations as this
Anyway,
policy is moving forward, so that developers are thinking about it and, you know, they're not starting from 0 6 months from now. They're starting to bake this into their, because we're at the point of where we're gonna nibble on the edges as far as policy tune-up.
I mean, I'm even thinking about, you know, developments that have come before council now without a formal policy, that have just come with the discussions that have come out of council and out of my board, out of this committee. You know, everybody wanting a firm policy, but then moving with the intention, with those good intentions of knowing that the policy is coming, like what can we make happen based on these conversations? So yeah, we won't be starting from ground zero, but we still need a bit of time.
And we still have to be careful about these discussions too, because it won't be approved by council ultimately. So we just need to be careful when we do have those discussions with developers. We can't make any promises to them.
Right.
Those are plans for like website. that
Yeah.
type of situation.
All right, so are we talking 120 at this point? Is that what people are comfortable with starting? Are we talking 135? Was a compromise that you said, Phil?
I'd go along with 135 before I go along with 120.
Might be
So,
a negotiation.
Willing to put that in the motion, Paul? Or would someone else like to put it in the motion?
Paul made the suggestion.
That's
The motion comes from him.
The suggestion was made before, I was just expressing an opinion.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make a motion for the home ownership part. We're talking 135 for our AMI ceiling.
Are we, I don't know, I'm leaning towards 120, but if Paul's saying 135, so I want to make sure I'm looking to see if that is going to bring us to consensus.
I'll go along with 135.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've made a motion, so I think we need a second to the motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for a vote?
I just want, if whatever we put in place, don't measure it on a year from today.
Correct.
Measure, like that's what, because we're sounding like. when's that gonna
That's a
be?
good point.
A year from implementation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Give it time.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Okay, so does that need to be part of the motion?
Yes.
You want to amend the motion to say?
Well,
I don't know that. The motion is for the change in the policy. I think our decision to look at it a year is outside of the policy.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so let me call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so we moved from 150 to 135. The other thing that I wanted to discuss, and you know, I've talked about this with Aaron, is right now, the 5% can either be lots or they can be homes. And I think there should be a ratio there. If they if the builders want to give lots, I think they should give like 3 times, they should give 15% lots as opposed to 5% lots, because there's a difference in the expense to the developer, whether they're giving lots or homes. So I appreciate, some discussion, some feedback in terms of whether that seems fair. Does that characterize what we talked about, Aaron?
It does. And so, yeah, it does.
So Paul, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, there's a different on what they're giving up. There's also different on what they're can recoup.
Right, their return.
If you actually build the home, even though it's still below market value, you're still selling it and making money on it. So I don't think you can look at it purely from the standpoint on what it is they're giving up. They're not giving up a home, they're selling it. I don't know if I completely track with you on that.
So there is the issue of it's not just an undeveloped lot or an unutility lot, whatever that's called. It is a lot with infrastructure. So
Yeah, sure. There's the expense that goes into that.
Yeah. But I think that, are you saying that whatever goes into the construction of the home, they're going to get back most of that, or, that investment plus?
Well, yeah, you don't build a home unless you're going to make money on the sale.
Okay.
Or at least some money.
So here's my concern. I'm concerned that if developers are given that choice, they'll say, okay, well, we'll give 5%, of our lots, and some other developer can, like Habitat or whomever, can put that home together.
Why is that a problem?
It's a problem because I see there's a difference in timing. I would prefer, and maybe developers don't work this way, but I prefer if there's a mixed income development to have the market rate homes developed about the same time as the affordable homes, because then there's a stigma to them.
As quickly as neighborhoods go in, everything's pretty much built all as quickly as they can anyway. It's not in a developer's best interest to let a project delay. Every day that goes by costs money.
Yep, that's true. Get that. I just think there's a difference between the value of a lot being donated versus the value of a home. I would prefer to see the home, because that's what we're after. We're after affordable homes, not affordable lots.
Again, you're talking about donating. We'd really be talking about the developer selling the lots to Habitat or whoever.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Versus selling the house to the ultimate consumer. So it's all kind of proportionate anyway, I guess. So it sounds like you're looking at it from the standpoint of you don't think the developer's giving enough if they just do the lots.
Correct.
So they.
Yep. Aaron, do you want to weigh in?
I feel like this is one of those maybe parking lot issues that we look at a year from now to see what actually transpires on the home ownership side.
Okay.
Because theoretically, I can argue both sides on that. And it depends on if it's a developer who then is selling them to individual builders, or if it's a builder developer who is the same company. It kind of just depends. There is, I believe, a value. There's a difference in the value of a lot versus a home. And I think on the developer side, there's more risk on the home, who, if they then have to wait for a buyer at 150% AMI or 135, who is creditworthy, who has the down payment assistance, and checks all those boxes. So I do believe a house to a developer is probably more of a risk. But there is some reward. They're not going to sell for a loss, but there's going to be holding costs if that buyer is hard to find.
Yeah.
It could be a long.
I'm gonna weigh in here and say I'm incredibly concerned about lots, for the reasons Bill just said. When we're talking about lots, I hear that they go quickly. I hear they go up quickly, but in reality, we don't know how quickly that is going to be. We have established, we have workforce here, and again, Apex is growing. Apex is going to continue to grow. We are not going to be at a loss for potential homeowners. And so again, trying to ensure that there are spot for homeowners, I think is key, and waiting for a lot, waiting for the develop, the sale or whatever that's going to look like from a lot perspective, I think is much more risky for the town and for the neighbors, and does not provide us what the community needs now. I think if we were in a different place, I think if this wasn't the town of Apex, I think we were talking about Durham or Raleigh, it might be very different. But I think given where we are right this minute in Apex, I think that it is a gamble to do lots and not to do.
Well, and that's where I was gonna go, is that then the town takes on that responsibility. If the town is the recipient of the improved lots versus a CLT or a Habitat, I don't know if the infrastructure is there right now to build on vacant lots.
I didn't even know we were talking about the possibility of the town taking the lots. I thought we were really talking about like a third party.
I think ultimately that's the goal. I'm just not sure the infrastructure is there for that third party.
So we've.
I mean, it's happening right now. I mean, MI Homes and Habitat for Humanity did a project in Apex.
Right, yeah,
It's-
I was gonna say, we
it's
have
not-
test cases of this already. We
it's not
just need to pull
hypothetical.
the data.
But that, what does that look like, right? So a developer comes in, gives 10 lots to Apex. And then do you guys have a predetermined partner, or do Rhett and I get to apply for it? And they shall-
Yeah.
I think
Find it out.
that goes way beyond this incentive policy
Right, yes,
into
exactly.
what risk is the town willing to take on to be the property owner, developer.
And let me be clear, when I was talking about risk, I was talking about risk for the policy, not risk for the town. I wasn't even thinking about the town assuming. I'm just saying that we're trying to have homes available for families. And if if a developer has purchased a plot of land and is looking to then sell that land, whoever that's going to go to, and not a home, I think that's problematic. That's the gamble. I'm not talking about who it's ultimately going to end up with. I think we're looking for homes, and Apex is in a good position right now to have homes ready. I mean, it's exactly why we talk about in the business world, we talk about having spec buildings. It's the same sort of thing. You don't want a lot, you want a spec building for a particular purpose. I think again, Apex right now is in a perfect position. Potential to revisit this policy later, but I think right now we want homes because we want families to be able to have homes.
Can you explain to me the timing differential that concerns you?
The concerns I have, number one, just merely, developing, let's say just a community, developing a neighborhood. What's going to happen as as the neighborhood is being phased out, and they may or may not be able to sort of go out and have one of our advisory board members apply and then continue while the developer A is already developing the other homes in the neighborhood. Why wouldn't they just develop all the homes at the same time? We're just trying to sublease.
It could happen at the same time, and I would argue that people who regularly build lower priced homes can do it quicker than the builder who's not accustomed to doing that and kind of has to re-engineer for that.
I would want that sort of, then again, I'm putting it back on the town, because then I would want before we approved, before it came to council, I would want to have all of that ironed out before we shovels in the ground.
I mean, I think that's exactly what happened in the case of MI and Habitat that did that project. I think it was from the get-go, it was understood that Habitat was going to come in, that MI was going to sell those lost Habitat built those houses. I think we're creating a solution without a problem. I don't think it's going to be a big.
So.
That's
let me
the
just- let me-
person who
could I
lived in
just
a
reinforce
neighborhood
what you
that didn't quite unfold
Tina,
that way.
could I just reinforce what you said? Because my objective anyway, and I think it should be, the objective of the affordable housing plan is to get homes on the ground that, people lower income can move into. And so my thought would be, okay, if you have 1% for the homes, like 5%, I'm not arguing with the 5% of the homes, but I think we need to make a different percentage for the lots, because I think we want to encourage the builders to actually build the homes. So I don't know whether that's 10% or 15% or whatever, but I would like to make that percentage different and see if we're having that effect, having that incentive effect on developers to actually build the homes. And then look at it after a year and say, okay, so is is that successful?
But why are we incentivizing that? I'm not sure that most market rate builders can build below market rate houses better than these guys can.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, that would be my argument. I'm going with Apex is a thriving market.
But it's not just.
If
a
I'm
find out
I'm
thing,
gonna
we're
name
actually-
builder A, if builder A is not interested in building, a affordable house, builder B might be. And then again, if we come back and that is not the case, then we revisit and we change it. But I think, I just keep at the top of my head that Apex, we are at $400,000. When I bought my home, it was less than 200,000. We have doubled.
I don't question any of that, but the purpose of incentive zoning is to come up with incentives that will incentivize developers to, you provide an incentive to control behavior or to promote behavior, right?
Absolutely.
And so I don't see how a developer, it's almost like developers selling the lots to one of these guys isn't good enough. They need to build the house too, so they're not putting in their pound of flesh. And I think the idea is to incentivize them to get those lots, those homes out there. And I don't know how saying, if you're lennar lots to one of these guys, that's not good enough anymore. You need to sell more of them.
Well, so if I'm in a
Wait,
neighborhood,
wait.
if I'm in a neighborhood where Lennar is building, I want Lennar to build the home. And I'm sorry, Lennar, I'm not trying to shame Lennar. If I'm in, if we are looking at Lennar and they are looking for an affordable housing incentive, I want Lennar to build that home. I want all the homes in that neighborhood to be Lennar built. I don't want somebody else building it.
Well, but we still have to give the developer some choice, but before, hold on. Before we were saying, Paul, Seth, you brought up, well, what's the value of the incentives? Okay, so my point is, well, what's the value of, selling the lot versus selling home? And again, from my standpoint, I think, the value of the lot is less than the value of the home. That's, and Aaron and I talked about this. I think I don't think that's rocket science. And so if that's the case, then I would like to set the percentage for the lots higher so that there's a trade-off to the developer. He's, is saying, well, it's a choice here. Do I build the homes for the lower income households for the affordable homes, or do I give the lots, to a nonprofit developer, affordable housing developer?
I hear what everyone's saying. Like, so I have two things. I get the land with a house on it gets more money than land.
Okay.
Right? We get that.
Yeah.
But you're not selling the land. It's a percentage, right? So if the land's worth $100,000, sell for 104, I get a 4% return. I still make money, but it's less than I would if I create. Same thing with the house, right? It's all comparable, depending on the numbers. But I think we're getting the cart in front of the horse. Sometimes, what is the process going to look like if they build the house and then sell it? Who are they selling it to? What's the process to make sure that everyone that wants that house, I mean, if it's going to a community member, then they just have to qualify. But if you want to sell 15 homes to Habitat, to Raw, like, what's the process, right? And
It's actually in there. It's actually in the manual, I believe. There's a marketing piece to it. It's laid out and
but marketing to affordable housing developers, and I don't know.
No. Marketing the affordable home once it's built, regardless of who builds it. There's a marketing plan that needs to be developed to present it to qualified income.
That's one thing. What I'm saying, if we do just the land, who's building it? What's the process to get them to build it? Right? How long? That is going to take time, right? You send, Lenore gives 15 units, then, you have to put an RFP. We have to respond to the RFP. The RFP has to be evaluated. Then we have to get everything together. I mean, we're talking a year before shovels in the ground. So there are differences, but the processes need to be laid out before we can really make an informed decision.
I think in reality, how it would work out is that if I'm a builder developer, I'm going to build and develop. If I'm just a developer who then sells off lots, if I were staff and the developer was coming to me and said, I want these incentives in exchange, I'm going to give 5 lots. As staff, I would say you need to talk to Brett, you talk to Seth, you come back as a partnership, or you need, to your point, we want to see homes built. We don't have a mechanism to receive these lots. You figure it out who is gonna be your builder for the affordable homes, and then come back, and then we'll evaluate it that way.
As a part of the whole proposal.
As a part of the whole proposal, so that as they're building it out, they all get built at once. You're not stuck with 3 lots that are at the end of, you know, the
Right.
ugly retention pond,
Right.
and not the nice fountain.
Well, and to your point, builders like Lennar do it all. They develop and build, they control the entire product. We still have a number of land developers in this area that all they do is develop and they don't build a single house.
Right.
They get the place set up for a multitude of builders that come in and build all around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we can't treat them all the same.
Right. And for that person, that would be where, if I were staff, go talk to them and figure out how many of these lots are gonna be, you know, the affordable lots, where the siting,
Yeah.
and then sell the rest to whoever your traditional builders are.
But I just want to be realistic, like, right, if I came to you and said, here's 5 lots, they're starting building in a month, it's $250 a square foot to build right now. Are you ready to build with $1.25 million next month?
Right, we could not.
We neither one of us could. Yeah.
But if you're trying to make it affordable, you wouldn't want to build it unless you know there's a need for it, though, right?
But we still have to have the
Yeah.
money up front to build, right?
Well,
We-
right,
yeah.
right.
But the reality is, the lead up time from concept to moving dirt is 9 months at least.
9 to 12 months.
At least, I
Oh.
mean, especially if you gotta go through the rezoning process and all of
That
that.
is probably dope.
Yeah, on a good time. So I don't think, it's not like you're gonna be approached, hey, can you say yes or no in
But
you know,
is it
4 weeks?
realistic to think that nonprofits are gonna be as fast and as efficient and as our developers who, that's what they do all the time?
I'm just trying to be like, we
Well,
have
I mean-
multiple projects happening at once, and if the timing's right and we get the right donation, like maybe,
Right.
right? But like, if we get approved for development in Raleigh, then we're out of Apex, right? Because
Right.
all of our resources are going there.
Well-
And DHIC, like, is the big one, but they don't do single families.
Right, and I don't think the land donation is where we wanna go. I mean,
No,
after the last.
they're still gonna be selling a lot.
Yeah,
Right.
or not, but you know, I think to Tina's point, we want to see the homes built first. That is the ultimate.
Well, if builders can't find a third party to work with them, they either build the houses or they don't get the incentives.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And that's the only thing I'm asking, like, I'm so many of these conversations, they're not just in housing, where we have like these grand ideas, but they're not realistic, right? And so I want to make sure that it's realistic, that this house gets built and sold. Because if you came to me and said you have to build 5 homes, you know, the land's free, but I still have to pay $1.25 million next 12 months, I probably couldn't do it. But, and I don't know who could at a nonprofit level, maybe there's a.
And what about the land developer who's not the Lennar? And all they're
Right.
doing is developing the land and they're not out there building the houses. So they've got to find somebody who can build the under market rate houses. And that's, you know, when Lennar's doing it, they can spread the cost out among the entire neighborhood, right?
Yep.
When land developer's doing it and you may have 4 or 5 builders out there doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
Maybe
really.
the incentive isn't for them, because I'm thinking about my neighborhood in which my builder built not only my neighborhood, but then because when he built in the market, the way it went down, he built in downtown Cary, similar homes, but very different finishes, very, like, he had that ability. And so my friend's home, same builder, looks very different and has, I mean, is more affordable and than my home was. So that builder, who's not Lennar, had the Lennar, had the opportunity to make those different choices. So maybe this isn't for those individuals who are having that difficulty, but I absolutely hear that the process needs to be laid out. And I completely agree with that. That is so critical.
So
Whatever we decide on must be
Can
laid
I,
out.
can I just kind of pull the pieces together here and ask whether, given all this discussion, whether it makes any sense at all to have different percentages for the homes, the affordable homes, which I think we agree is 5% at this point, versus the percentage for the lots? Should those 2 percentages be the same at this point in time? We can always revisit them, but should they be the same at this point in time?
Because you have some businesses that all they do is develop and they don't have the ability to build homes. I think distinguishing those is like putting a bigger burden on those businesses than companies like Lennar that can do it all. And I don't see how that is helping the cause.
So I would recommend we don't make a decision about that right now. Let us talk about it and staff. I think as this discussion is proved out, the home ownership side of the policy is more complicated than the rental side. And
Well, and
let's
we,
think about this a little bit more.
we already have we've already had some conditions offered previously, some of which, just a few have been lot donations. And then a lot more have been, just offering, 2 homes at 80% AMI or whatever it is. So we already have that in our history over the last several years, or last couple of years, I guess you could say. So I'm wondering if that's something we can pull that information, see about timing. That way we have examples
Yes.
to move forward from here. Because I would rather make a decision based on actual data
Right.
rather than hypotheticals.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, sure. So we'll turn it over to Aaron and the staff to take a look at. So here's my question. We're talking about doing this relatively quickly. Do we want to schedule a special meeting in a month or 2 months rather than waiting until a meeting in time or date in June that we don't even know at this point?
So how quickly do you think we can get a turnaround on updates here?
Say something to Paul's point. Is there a way we could say instead of 5 and 15%, we could say the way your group is selling that property, are you selling it as vacant land or selling it as home built? That is what you have to provide in affordable housing to get incentivized, right? If you're just developing it to then sell it to builders, then you just sell the land. If you're, Lenore do it all, then you sell the
The only
house.
problem is it's not always that clear cut. Lennar is one extreme, a land developer who doesn't build is another extreme. Then you've got a land developer who does build and maybe just wants to build a few houses and let others build them. It's not always black and white.
Yeah, I think we want to be careful if we make this more complicated. There's a very good reason for making it more complicated. I would tend to keep it on the simple side, and that's why I was proposing a different percentage for the lots versus the homes. But I'm okay with,
No, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. All right. So, okay.
Beyond anecdotal, Brett and I are sitting here telling you as one of 2, maybe 6 affordable housing developers. We can't turn around houses that quickly. And we keep talking about the affordable housing. They have to build it affordable. One of the big LIHTC rules is you can't build an 80% unit any different than you build a 30%.
Right.
Right? Yep. Like, so do we want to build a $500,000 house and say, hey, look, we just moved that $300,000 house because they have worse lighting, worse whatever,
Right.
That's a question to ask yourself.
I mean, honestly, I think it'll work itself out because, as Paul hinted at, right, the developer's not in theory losing money. I mean, or they wouldn't be doing it, right? Even at 120% or 135%, whatever the number is, right? I mean, I think the challenge is going to be for them to find people to put in those units at the right price point. But there's option for that as well. And I think they'll account for that in what they're sort of looking at when they incentivize things. And there are providers that can help them with that, right? So I honestly don't know that it's a problem right now. I mean, I understand what you're getting at, but I'm not sure that we're there yet. And trying to, piece it together, I guess, right?
I'm okay with, letting, Aaron and the staff take a look at this. My only question is that's another step in the process, and I want to move this along. And so do we really need to wait until June to consider this, or can we come back a little more quickly to move the process along? That's all.
With all of the discussion, I would actually recommend that we stay where we are.
You say 150 or is that?
No,
Oh,
5%.
I'm sorry,
Talking about 5%.
5%.
Yeah, just leaving it where it's at for a little bit of time. Revisit it.
I'm sorry. No, to keep it at the 5%, get more data for sure, but let's, again, go back and get more data over the year. We'll have this conversation in the minutes, and revisit it.
Yeah, if it is an issue that becomes complicated and something that is, that we're seeing consistently become a problem, that's a good time to have that discussion. So,
I mean, honestly, if you're getting lots or houses at this point, you're getting something more than you got now. It's my sort of thought. on it.
Right. And while my preference is houses,
I
exactly.
mean, we can figure the rest of it out, I think. is,
But
you
the
know,
timing might not be perfect.
Right.
But it's good.
Right.
I think it is a good discussion. It's something that, you know, to get the policy rolling, let's go ahead and
I mean,
get.
we've been looking at this for over a year now.
Right, so.
And to make a change at this stage, I think we need to have compelling reason to do so and not just some hypothetical concern that we don't have any data on.
And
Can I make a motion?
with all due respect, I brought this up when we started the discussion, not in this body, but I brought it up to the town staff, to CJ. And, you know, of course, he can't confirm it right now, but I did bring it up.
But it has been, I don't remember
Can I
talking
make a
about it
motion?
here. I don't remember talking about that in here.
We didn't, I
Okay.
just said that. We didn't
Okay,
talk
right,
about it.
right,
but-
okay.
So someone's making a motion?
I was gonna make a motion to
Okay.
keep, do I need to make a motion to keep it at 5%?
We
Or-
don't need to
No,
do
okay.
anything.
There we go.
So my question is, what's the next step here? How do we move this along?
Yeah, so I'll get with Michael. I've got to write a HUD action plan next week. But then I will get back on this as soon as that action plan is. So we turn this around in 3 weeks, 30 days at the most.
Okay, so do we want to schedule a meeting for next month?
That's up to you all.
I just have a quick question. When you schedule that meeting, that special meeting, is that the only discussion on the agenda? Or are you expecting us to have everything that we said earlier?
No. The
Okay.
special meeting means there's a specific item on the agenda.
Right.
That's in the
Okay.
rules of procedure, yeah.
What is it the special meeting's for?
This special
To
meeting
approve
will
the
be
incentive
to actually vote on, you know,
Sending it to planning.
on sending this on to
Oh,
the
okay.
planning board so that it can go on up to the town.
Basically,
council.
so we don't have to wait 3 months.
Okay.
To get to.
When we were talking about special meeting
Yeah.
before, we were talking about the 5% versus 10%. And with
No.
that issue off the table, I
Able
misunderstood.
to do what?
Are they able to vote to recommend the policy?
No,
It's
we
not
wanted
quite
time to
ready yet.
go back and clean up and give Aaron some time. Is that what you're talking about?
I thought that the procedures manual was ready based on the discussion and the one change.
Oh,
I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a need.
So
There's a
if,
need for cleanup.
right, if this is I get what you're saying.
yeah.
If this is the only change that we're requesting for this, and you're gonna make that change, then we can go ahead and approve the whole thing today, right now. And it can just be, when you're done with it, you can submit it
Are we
to,
talking about approving this?
yes,
With the changes that we've talked about
with
today.
the change that we just talked about with the percentages for rental versus homeowner. So if that's the only change happening,
Well, then I mean, we got this red line strikeout version of all kinds of changes that had happened since we last met. And I mean, with all due respect, we didn't get any of the materials for this meeting until yesterday at 3:30. And we didn't get a red line strikeout of this until we showed up here today. I'm not ready to vote on anything related to this.
point made.
So the strikeout, the red line it's fine. Most of that is wordsmithing, and none of the policy changes. It doesn't affect the policy at all, with the exception of what we agreed to today. I've just made it less jargony.
I mean, we've never really talked about this.
Okay.
And there was a meeting where I asked at some point if we were going to be talking about this, and I was told that that wasn't within the purview of this board, and that was
I remember that.
staff
Yeah,
thing, and I almost felt like I was being admonished for asking about it. So, I mean, if I'm going to be asked to vote on anything about this, I think we need the ability to really make sure we've all had a chance to read it and have any questions that we haven't answered. And I'm not even prepared to ask those questions today.
And I came into I changed out the draft. The draft that you got did not have the changes in it. And I made this decision today to give that to you because I came into the meeting
Thank you.
thinking that from that last meeting that we still needed to vet this and go through this and
I appreciate
that you had a chance to do
And-
that.
and
So
I
I
appreciate
made that
that.
decision.
Thank you.
And we talked about that. Michael and I talked about it
Thank you.
today in the last couple of days. So that was my doing.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to have
Yes.
One more.
another meeting before we say Yes. to-
And so that is what you're proposing as the
Right.
special meeting, I think, is to go through this.
That would be great.
And I agree.
I've been wanting to go through this since the beginning.
Yes. So we have not gone through
I'm
this.
Correct.
I'm looking to Alan. I was looking to somebody else before, but now I'm redirected to Alan. Can you do a poll of the members of the board here to find out when we can meet, like in about a month? A
Yes,
month
I'll
is enough
send-
time,
I'll
right?
send two polls. I'll send the one for the June date.
Correct.
I've already been started vetting that through while we've been in this meeting.
Okay,
And then I'll also send some dates for probably April, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah.
Will allow you time to get with Michael and staff, and
and,
that's not
and,
appropriate.
and just make sure that, you know, the version goes out to us board a week beforehand.
And
Right,
that was
yeah,
also me, working with Michael and trying to.
I'm not being critical, I'm just saying, moving
We
forward.
get it. We
I
understand.
take responsibility for that. That's why I went out yesterday, because I was holding on to it to make sure.
Are we able to meet virtually?
Just to be clear, if we're only a month out, for me, it's gonna have to be afternoon for me to participate. If we're doing 6 to 8 weeks, then there's a possibility I could do morning. But just letting you know.
And there's a request, a second for a virtual meeting.
Yeah, it just makes it that much easier.
I think, I agree.
So because this board is considered a public body, you know, the virtual option was stopped when the state of emergency ended in August. I think some of you were joining virtually and you shouldn't have been. But that was actually, you know, when the state of emergency expired, so to speak, with the governor, that removed the remote meeting or remote participation statute that was allowed. I do know that, you know, staff is currently working with the legal department to see if there is any workaround for the advisory boards.
Good.
We know that there is no workaround for council, in terms of for advisory boards, but that's coming soon, you know.
We have to be available at a certain date, at a certain time, regardless whether it's virtual or in person.
Correct.
So I think we can do the poll for, say, mid-April. I think that should give plenty of time for this to be finalized and for it to come out to us like a week ahead of time. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we'll include some dates for April,
Okay,
the end of April timeframe.
Aaron will not be available the last week of April. So
Okay.
once you put that out, I'll.
Well, before we propose dates to the committee groups, we'll have already vetted
Yeah.
out
yeah,
everybody else.
yeah, good.
And thank you for the red line strikeout. That is wonderfully helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even things on like rules and procedure, if it's ever issued again and there are changes, it would really be helpful just to know what the changes are. I mean, that's just the procedural thing.
We didn't get the red line in our email.
Yeah.
Did you guys send them?
Okay, do I hear, is there any other business to do? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor?
Heard that.
Thirty? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Only needs one motion.
Yeah, but everybody's so eager.
I
That's right.
don't have any.
Everybody wants to jump off board.
Nothing, I'm sorry. Sorry you're hearing about it.
Thanks, Paul.
It was nice.
provided the creative-
Bye.